Hi everyone, it's Laura here for Studio Katia, and in today's video I'm going to share with you how to create a Halloween card with the spooky pumpkin trimmings and the MEOWY Halloween stamp sets. I started the card by stamping my images on some Nina Solar White 110 pounds cardstock using my Spectrum Noir alcohol-proof ink in the color Noir Black. The reason why I chose this ink and this paper is that I'm going to do some coloring with my alcohol markers, my Spectrum Noir Illustrator markers, and I find that I get the best results on this paper, and with this ink I get no bleeding at all. I also used my Mini Misty to do my stamping so that I could stamp my images repeatedly on the same spot without getting any double stamping. And then I moved on and started coloring the images. As I said at the beginning of the video, these are part of the Spooky Pumpkin Trimmings stamp set and the MEOWY Halloween stamp set. The Spooky Pumpkin was released in August and the MEOWY Halloween was released a couple of years ago, if I'm not mistaken. But as soon as I saw the new release with this fun stamp set with the pumpkins, I knew I had to combine it with this cute little kitty. And so this is what I'll be doing on my card today. For my coloring, I'm using Illustrator markers and I'm going from darkest to lightest. I'm first laying down the shadows, and once that is done, I'm going to come in with a second layer where instead of adding the markers, so to say flat, I'm going to add some flicks to create some texture on the pumpkin. The markers that I used are TN7, BO3, BO1 and GY2. And then for the inside of the pumpkin, I wanted them to look as if they were lit up. So I'm going to use some bright yellows and some oranges to color those areas. The markers that I used are OR2, BO3, CT3 and CT1. And I'm adding the darkest colors on the edges of the carvings and I'm keeping the centers lightest. I'm not going to show the entire coloring for this stamp set because all the pumpkins were colored the same, and for the rest of the images I did some very basic coloring with some cool grays and some golden browns. For the top of the pumpkin I used some greens. I used DG3, DG2 and DG1. And as I'm editing and recording the voiceover, I realized that I colored also part of the pumpkin with the green markers. So, I think we're going to live with that. It doesn't matter too much, I don't think. Next, I moved on and started coloring this adorable little kitty, which I colored as if it was black. So I started from my IG8, which I then blended out with an IG6 and an IG4 marker. I'm adding the shadows on the edges of the image and I'm keeping the center lighter, as if the light was coming directly from straight ahead. For the little collar and the band on his hat, I used the same greens that I have on the pumpkins, so that this would tie in nicely with the rest of the images in my card. And then for the inside of the ears and the paws, I used some flesh colors. For the hat, I had to throw in a little bit of purple so that I have all the 3 Halloween colors on my card. So I used PL5, LV3 and LV1. And again, I'm adding the darkest colors on the outside portions of the hat and blending them out towards the center where I will have my highlight color. The MEOWY Halloween stamp set comes with a set of matching dies. The dies even cut out the little paws, and there are smaller images in the set that you can use, like a little candy basket that you can tuck between its paws. But I didn't use those images in this card, I only have the little kitty. The Spooky Pumpkins Trimmings set doesn't come with matching dies, so I used my IK Success Cutter B scissors to cut out the image. I'm leaving a white border all around so that it will be similar to the die cut image that I will have with the little cat. And to get a nice and smooth cut, I am holding my scissors with my right hand. I am right-handed. I'm holding the scissors straight and I am turning the paper instead of moving the scissors. And this image is rather simple to cut. There aren't a ton of nooks and crannies that you have to go around, so this was pretty quick and straightforward to do. And after that, I moved on and started working on my sky, for which I am blending distress inks in the colors Salty Ocean, Blueprint Sketch, and Chipped Sapphire. The paper that I'm using is Bristol Smooth cardstock, as distress inks and oxides blend really well on this type of surface. And the die that I used to trim down this panel is part of the Dotted Patterns Set 3 dies by Studio Katia. Once I was done blending my inks, I decided to create some stars, and for that I used my Gansai Tambi Starry Colors palette. I activated the watercolors with some water, and then I used a paintbrush to create my stars. At this point, I decided that I wanted to add some water droplets too, so I used my Distress Ink sprayer and a microfiber cloth to dab off the excess. The result was a little bit too stark, so I went back in with my foam blenders and covered those areas partially so that you have just a subtle look from those water droplets. And then I added back a few stars because I had sort of blended those out too with my blending sponges. For my sentiment, I used the Halloween Trimmings dies. This die cuts the greeting Happy Halloween, and there are actually 3 different dies in the set. I also blended a little bit of Salty Ocean on the bottom of this panel because that part will show a little bit behind our pumpkins. I adhered everything to some black cardstock that I had die cut to an A2 size using the Darling Ribbon and Frames dies, and then I could go ahead and adhere my pumpkins first and then my little kitty there on the foreground. I used a white gel pen to add some highlights to the kitty, its hat, and also to bring back in those highlights in its eyes because I accidentally blended some of my Illustrator markers on top. And then, inspired by a card from my design teammate Hilda from I Love Doing All Things Crafty, I decided to use the spiderweb shaker dies to add some spiderwebs too to this card. I used them to die cut some vellum, and then I basically glued bits and pieces on the top of my card front. I'm using some Nouveau Deluxe adhesive, but actually it does show through the vellum. I knew this and I should have used sticky adhesive instead, but I think, I made it work in the sense that I will be adding some embellishments to the card front, so I will be partially covering some of those spots with the embellishments, and partially the fact that there is so much going on will draw the attention away from those areas where the glue shows behind the vellum. And speaking of embellishments, you can see that I went a little bit crazy with these beautiful pearls. These were released with the latest release by Studio Katia, and the ones that I'm using now are called Exotic Onyx Pearls. I think they're absolutely gorgeous and they add an extra touch of whimsy to this card. And I felt that this black kind of iridescent color was just perfect for a Halloween card. I first played with the arrangement of all the pearls, and then once I was satisfied, I used my Studio Katia glue and a jewel picker to glue them to the front of my card, and here you can see the final result. And that's it for today. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope I inspired you to create with the Studio Katia Spooky Pumpkin Trimmings and the MEOWY Halloween stamp sets. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and leave a comment in the comment section down below. And if you haven't already, you can subscribe and activate notifications to be always up to date with new card making and paper crafting tutorials. As always, thank you all so much for stopping by and have a great day.